Okay, so in this video here, I sort of want to do a reaction video to Gerald Undone's video where he talks about sort of the state of sort of camera reviews and sort of how that's all been going down and some of the things that are sort of surrounding it. And a lot of it is very similar to the tech community as well too. And I sort of want to give my perspective as a tech content creator, sort of how all that sort of relates sort of here. And instead of doing a whole video of my own sort of talking about it, because Gerald really did a really good job of highlighting a lot of the points that also sort of relate in sort of the tech community. And I've been doing this for the last 17 years. So I've been around for a while. There's only like a couple people I know that's only done this longer than me. Shout out to Andrew Edwards. I think he's got me beat by a couple of years. So I've been around since the term influencer wasn't even a thing. And still the worst thing that ever kind of came up was the term influencer. First little rant here, because it's just another word for salesman, I feel. And that's why you feel icky when you see sort of influencers, because nobody likes to be sold to. But I want to just sort of give you my perspective from the tech and gaming content creator world about what Gerald's kind of saying here about this. So let's jump right into it.
What did I actually write when I wrote that blurb on social? Let's talk about press events for a minute. They're weird. In the photo video space, many of us camera reviewers are friends. So when you invite a bunch of us to an interesting location and we're hanging out, eating good food and sharing stories, the positivity in the air naturally rises. Then they shuffle us all in an auditorium where an enthusiastic speaker from the brand comes out to tell us about this new product that they're very excited to share with us. By this point, the room is already so excited just to be there in that moment that we clap and cheer just because some dude from the camera brand merely walked on stage. So then when they start showing us slides on a massive screen about their latest, likely only infinitesimally better gadget, we collectively start building a video in our minds of how to best regurgitate this to you, the consumer and YouTube viewer, and likely how to shoehorn a sponsor in there so we can actually get paid, because these press events actually cost us money, not make it. They don't give a presentation about the camera's cons, so it's up to us to find them. But imagine trying to find all those cons while walking around an exotic location with a group of friends, all giggling about a bunch of esoteric memes, and with limited time before we have to travel back home and rush to edit the video to hit embargo. It's a flawed system designed to generate hype and sell products. It's also extremely effective. We should actually be impressed that many creators are able to put any kind of reasonably balanced review at all, considering these conditions. I don't generally fault anyone for the type of content that comes out around embargoes or after press events, aside from generally lackluster or completely absent disclosures, but I think what we're actually doing wrong is playing the game in the first place.
Yeah, that's very accurate, kind of what he's kind of saying. That's sort of described by the press events in a lot of ways. And they are kind of designed to sort of be, there is a hype point. It is a marketing sort of point to it when you're dealing with a brand. They're looking to get the name out, whatever product is, and kind of spread the word out, things like that. And what's really kind of happened in the past, there wasn't that many people that were kind of had access to go to those events. So when you got there, there was time to see the events, see the products, kind of formulate your video, go home and formulate it realistically and get it kind of all together, kind of find the good, the bad, whatever sort of with it. And you kind of could give sort of your first impressions, or like really, not really first impressions, really your hands-on sort of with things is what we kind of called it sort of back then, to kind of have that there. And a lot of that honestly changed, because a lot of what happened within YouTube of people trying to game the system to be first, when she talks about this first stuff, and it really kind of influences a lot of these sort of things. And basically a lot of people retitling their stuff that are hands-on as reviews, and kind of people taking it as that and confusing people, and it just kind of evolved into that sort of thing. But a lot of these events are definitely like that. You go there, it's a good atmosphere. There's usually some type of refreshments that are going to be available there. You see all of your YouTuber friends, which is like, I like doing it. It's a nice thing to kind of have that, because a lot of us work pretty much on our own virtually. So being able to meet people in person is actually kind of a nice thing to have, and to be able to do that. But pretty much the way he described the flow is pretty much every sort of tech event for the most part. So let's keep it going here.
In my opinion, there's 3 stages to the camera reviewer life cycle, if you will. You start out, nobody knows who you are. You got to do everything yourself. If you're trying to review cameras, you're either reviewing the cameras you own, maybe some old stuff. Maybe what I did is I made a connection with a local store and started trying to borrow cameras for them for favors and then making videos on that stuff. I wasn't getting sent anything. I wasn't going on press trips. That's step 1. That's the hustling life cycle. And then when you do that, if you build a bit of an audience, then the brands are going to see you. And then the invitations will come. Invitations to borrow gear, invitations to maybe get in a little earlier, invitations to go to a press event. And this is the one where the traps appear. And then I feel there's a 3rd stage, which is kind of where I'm at now, and I know some other creators that are as well, which is you're kind of over it, and you see the lack of value in that middle section that a lot of the audience doesn't see. They think Oh, they got to say things positively because if not, they're not going to get sent gear anymore. They're not going to go on the trips. What do you mean the video's not sponsored? It's clearly sponsored because you're getting all this stuff. That value is overstated because when you're first entering into that second phase of the life cycle, it is extremely exciting.
Yeah, for the most part, what he's talking about here also happens in sort of the tech and sort of consumer tech space as well too, where you have a lot of like there's different phases to things. And I know well, the way I came up in this was so much different because there really wasn't tech YouTubers when I really first started with this. There really wasn't content creators in like a media section. You were kind of lumped in with the rest of press. So that kind of presented something kind of a little bit different, so to speak, with that. But yeah, pretty much this is how everyone pretty much is going to start off in the first step that they're saying is like you kind of review and talk about the tech you currently have or currently have access to. And then as you grow, brands see you, companies see you. This is where you get invited to more trips, more sort of press events, get sent, asked for, sent gear, sent product to be reviewed and sort of those things like that. And that is a very exciting time. But there is a point where you do have to kind of manage that a bit and kind of get an understanding of like get a better understanding of like what this sort of period is about and understanding, make sure you realize this is a business and what you're doing is for a business and not necessarily just go out there and have fun and just get a bunch of free product because you are sort of doing this for your audience and you don't necessarily want your audience to feel as though you're just doing things because you're getting free product or you're just getting paid for it. But at the same time, you're also working with brands who want access to your audience. So you need to make sure you kind of protect that sort of thing. And that's where it really kind of becomes a fuzzy thing within stage 2. He goes a little bit more deeper into this, but it's kind of the whole stage. In stage 3, sorry, allergies, but stage 3, yeah, that can happen depending upon where you sort of feel with. You can kind of be over the whole entire thing, or you kind of get an idea of what the value of that entire thing sort of is and kind of make sure you're playing it in a way or setting up in a way that's the ethics that you want it to be and making sure you're honoring your audience as well too, that you sort of cultivated when sort of doing this thing. So that's pretty kind of how those things kind of go about.
But the trips thing has always been sort of a joke to me. One, as I said, these trips cost money. They don't make money. So for me, it's always just been about hanging out with other creators. That's the sole value to me. If I want to go on a trip, I'll pay to go on my own trip. I don't need the brand to send me there. And often I just don't go. And if I do go and then they announce something, I say, just so you know, I'm not making a video while I'm here. I don't make videos about press events. I'm not going to rush to get anything out. You can send me the camera and I'll review it at home in my time. That's the only way I like to do it. I don't make videos on press events.
That can vary for everyone. So like some people do like to cover the events. A lot of times that stuff gets pushed more to social media. There used to be like a period where you could, like I mentioned earlier, like you could cover press events in a way that you could talk about the product and kind of talk about what you're excited about and have this like sort of hands-on and this sort of first look sort of way about things. But because of the way YouTube sort of worked, and a lot of people, a lot of creators out there, not naming any names, were gaming the system, especially with titles and thumbnails and calling things reviews, exclusives, this and that and the other. It really kind of tainted that whole sort of scenario. And then it really even became even more tainted with sort of how the embargoes worked, different levels of embargoes. It just became sort of like the whole idea of covering sort of the press event and the way we used to do it kind of just completely changed. It's like what he's kind of saying right now. There's also the idea of embargoes. He'll get into that in just a minute here, but pretty much, yeah, this is accurate as to how it kind of is sort of now. I'm hoping maybe it'll change in the future, but I kind of doubt it. A lot of other things we need to change for to kind of make this to work better.
Not trying to throw shade, but it comes back to what I was saying, which is you get this sort of rushed video where everybody kind of makes the same video and everybody's only discovered 3 or 4 of the exact same cons. And kudos to all those creators for actually being able to put together these videos in a quick time with, a balanced perspective on as much information as we have. But these creators haven't had a chance to really live with the camera. So they're going to find things out later on, and then they're going to give you their full reviews later on. So the preview that they give you at the press events is just because they have to. And it's not fair that we're in a situation where they have to. Everybody feels like they're racing. Everybody feels like they got to be first. You all got to get your video out.
It depends on the press event and the brand, but many times you're not necessarily asked or told that you have to do a video. That just comes from the past. That's what we used to sort of do all the time, which was create videos based on the events. And I think that's just kind of something that's kind of carried over. A lot of the stuff's now been pushed to social media, what I call a social marketing, truthfully speaking. And that's kind of what the events are for in a sense for marketing. So if you push things on social and kind of put it in the marketing perspective, yeah, okay, you talk about that to your audience, you're presenting something new and cool, and you're just in the moment kind of giving your first reactions to things. I think that's perfectly fine as long as you kind of disclose that and explain that and put that sort of out there. This is my preview, this is my first impressions, those sort of things. This is my first reaction to it. I think that's perfectly sort of normal and fine to be able to sort of do. There is a lot of pressure to be out there and be first, and that has a lot to do with sort of how the kind of the game sort of works, what I think he's going to get into, if I remember correctly, kind of next about this. But usually there isn't like the pressure to have to do those things at most events. Sometimes there is, but at most, not really. Sometimes you just go to the event, enjoy it, and see what's kind of there, and then you kind of either get the product. A lot of times you'll get the product kind of there. Sometimes you, kind of depends. And you kind of go and kind of have your own thing, and you kind of take what you saw at the preview, and then kind of say, hey, this is what they kind of talked about here. This is my experience, and the comparing and contrasting of that is what should kind of make a good sort of review, overview video sort of about things. And that's kind of the way it should sort of go. But because how people are doing things on YouTube and the economics and the business of it, it kind of just changes this all into this sort of, like you said, rushed video that drops about things that barely gives all the information out that they probably sort of would be better to have. But let's keep going.
When we talk about brands, we're gonna talk about consequences, but let's just move past that. Trips are not as valuable as they appear. The audience shouldn't overstate their value. And if you're a new YouTuber, don't get sucked into like, oh my God, trips. I know they're going to be exciting, but have sort of like a code of ethics and stick to it. Make your money on YouTube and then pay for your own trips. That's my advice on that.
Well, I'll say this, back to the whole trips thing. A lot of times you end up paying for your own trips. Even in most cases, some people you can get the brands to kind of pay you. That can even be selected based upon where you fall in the hierarchy with everything. So, but most of the time it is a cost, either cost of money, sometimes time. Just all kind of depends on those things. So when you go on those trips, you got to kind of have a business mindset to when you're kind of doing those. If you're going to be a creator and like picking and choosing which ones you go to, why are you going to those, what you're going to do with those, just kind of have those sort of things in mind when you're kind of doing that.
Is that when audiences have a hard time believing that you're getting flown to a place that you care enough about to go on that trip to actually go on it, that you're being given the camera as a long-term loaner, that you have somewhat of an established relationship with the brand, that you're also somehow going to be completely able to just, if you hated the camera, to make a video, I hate this camera and here's why. Now, some creators do, and I've seen those videos, and kudos. And the other creators I know personally, I know that they are trying to find a balanced, objective video in there. All I'm saying is that the skepticism from the audience, I think, is warranted, because me as a viewer who's in this space, when I watched your videos, I was skeptical.
So I would say with sort of this part right here is that you do have to have your integrity in place. And some brands are okay with talking about anything. Some brands may not be. Don't work with the brands that are saying that they're not going to be comfortable with you being honest about what the product is and the things you're talking about. You also don't want to view things in sort of a black and white sort of lens. There's no perfect products. So a lot of times what I at least try to do is say, okay, here's the product. First, am I interested in this product? Yes. Okay. Is this product for me? Yes or no? May not be the most perfect thing for me. Okay. What's the story of this product? What is the brand? Who are their target market? Who are they trying to point to? And does this succeed in being a viable option for the particular market that they're looking for with that product? And that I sort of feel is what, as tech content creators and reviewers, that you sort of need to kind of figure out and find your way of doing that and keeping it that way. Because I think sometimes we talk in like superlatives, but you see a lot on YouTube, which is, I hate this, or it's done, or it's over, these extremes. The reason I think you see a lot of that is because those are the words that get clicks and views on YouTube. It's those sort of trigger words that create an emotional response. And that's why they're putting it in the title and thumbnail a lot of the times. And I think there is a balance there with that you can sort of do, but I also think you have to learn to be objective, be fair, be balanced, learn how to give proper criticisms in a way, and don't be so black and white with a lot of sort of things, I think would kind of mitigate sort of a lot of this. But from what he's kind of saying, especially when you're looking at some of the product reviews, even the camera space or even in text space, I know from a lens, I can tell when the video is sponsored, when it's not sponsored, when like, okay, they're not trying to say anything because they want to keep their relationship with that brand going in that way, which a lot of times that might not even actually matter. You can say a bunch of positive things with a brand and that brand can still ditch you at some point or ghost you or be very wishy-washy with you in terms of access to events, access to embargoes and products and stuff like that, because a lot of things can change from what their sort of goals are in the back end. A PR team can change, marketing teams can change, marketing PR cannot communicate with each other. There's a lot of sort of different things that can kind of happen when it comes to those sort of things. So learning how to kind of figure out what that proper balance is without, I think, going into the extremes, I think is the best path for your audience, and that's who you should be putting first over anything else.
I think there's a misconception with a lot of people, because of the comments that I've read, that suggest that when they see, 30 people, whatever, all posting a video at the same time, what's Lumix up to, what's Sony up to, etc. That's just an embargo. And in case you don't know what an embargo is, the brand, they make you sign an NDA, then they give you all the information about the camera, and they say, nobody's allowed to talk about this until this date and time.
Yeah, that's pretty much how embargoes sort of go. And what kills me, this goes for any product, by the way. This goes for camera, smartphones it happens with. You can have the dreaded double embargo with smartphones that can happen a lot, which kind of, sometimes you can only talk about certain things and then you can have a certain other set of things sort of after that. It can be kind of weird, but that's why you kind of see 30 people posting all at the same time because everybody feels they have to be first. But she gets into this whole first thing next on this. I definitely have some comments about that into that reaction. But yeah, like the embargoes kind of work in that way. And the funny thing is that you don't necessarily have to post on embargo day. Some brands kind of do push you to sort of do that, but you don't necessarily have to do it. You can wait a day or two later. A lot of times I do that myself. A lot of other people, I suggest to do that myself because we end up just shoving this 30 videos about the same product in everyone's feed. It's bound to get buried and everybody sort of cannibalizing each other for views because there's only so many videos somebody's going to watch on this, and a lot of things are going to get sort of lost. And there have been plenty of times that I have done stuff later or posted later that have done better than with the embargo itself. So like, and a lot of times the embargo times also can be very, very tight. You can have the announcement, you get the product, and it's maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks max. We used to get like a month or so at a time, but it's really like almost 2 weeks max to be able to get everything you need to talk about with that specific product. This happens a lot of times with smartphones before you have to have the embargo to release your review. And because we're in the market of YouTube, everybody's kind of releasing at the same time, trying to get ahead, trying to catch the wave cycle at that point in time. And in the try to make sure the video's within there, because 2 weeks later it could fizzle out. But there's a lot of other reasons why I think that sort of happens, and sort of being in the hype cycle, I think is not always the best thing. But yeah, the embargoes, that's kind of what's kind of going on. And to be honest with you, I don't think they're that much a big of a deal anymore. If you're making good content and know how to speak to your audience, your video will kind of do well in accordance with that. It's not, you focus on what you can control. You can't always control everything. At least that's what I've learned. All right.
As somebody who's been doing this for a while, I can tell you the value in being first is also severely overstated. I've had some videos where I launched them an embargo and they've done incredibly well. I've also had some that were but then I've had some videos I did after the fact where I thought nobody's gonna watch this because I wasn't first, I missed it, I'm 6 months late, or Canon didn't send me the camera until after everybody's already covered it. Nobody's gonna listen to me. And they did either just as well or surprisingly better. I think that being first is way overrated, and that is one of the major traps of that second stage of the life cycle.
Being first, where that really came from, back during the early days of sort of YouTube. That did kind of matter a bit of getting your video out first, because there wasn't that many of us in the space, and also there wasn't really a lot of embargo things going on at the time. A lot of times you had events, everybody went to the event, and then everybody waited to get devices sent to them sort of later if they didn't get it at the event. And they might not have been able, some people might not have been able to post until this particular time. I remember this worked out for me one time, that sort of the being first thing. I think it was either the Galaxy S2 or the S3. I had gotten my review that just happened to come in a little bit earlier, so I was able to drop an unboxing because there was no sort of embargo with it. And so I got first mover's advantage in that case, and then that did put me sort of ahead. the thing also about that is being first doesn't mean that's going to be like that forever. If you're really focused on like what you should be focused on, more evergreen videos or videos that are going to last a long time, being first doesn't really factor sort of into that, because you can be easily sort of passed sort of later on those sort of things. Like it used to matter quite a bit, but I think in the last 5 to 6 years, it doesn't matter nearly as much as we think it does, and as we sort of still operate in this tech and gaming and camera creating space, we still kind of operate in that sort of mindset. And I think if we got away from thinking in that way, it would actually make things a whole lot better in terms of what content sort of gets out there about devices. So yeah, we need to get past the whole being first sort of thing. There's some instances where that does matter and that can play a factor depending upon product, depending upon how it's handled, but the majority of the time, not really. All right, let's keep it moving.
Again, to new YouTubers, you only got to the recognition you got to by making videos on old stuff, by making better videos or more interesting videos or providing a unique angle on old stuff. You now don't need to have the new stuff in order to keep making interesting videos with interesting angles and so on.
True.
How brands react to positive versus negative coverage and how that affects future trips, gears, and loans. It depends. It depends on the brand. Now, I'll give you a little bit of context here. I have an experience of calling a camera strange and then not being invited to review the S5 Mark II, because my review of the S5 was Panasonic Lumix S5, a strange but powerful camera. And I stand by that. It was a strange camera. Why did I call it strange? Because it basically made the S1s and their more expensive previous cameras kind of superfluous. It did everything they did, but for cheaper. And yet somebody at Lumix saw that title and said, when we're figuring out who we should send the S5 Mark II to, don't send it to this guy because he thought the S5 was strange.
That type of pettiness can honestly actually happen a lot in the space where you can title things or mention things, or a brand can see something you're talking about with a previous product, and there's one little thing they don't like, or one little thing that you said that they didn't care for, and then suddenly you're kind of on the blacklist or the shun list or something like that. And that can happen off and on. Depending upon what PR team is dealing with. PR teams change in this space all the time. So, and even within those PR teams, people kind of move up and down and leave and go left and right all the time in that space. But this, like what he's talking about, yeah, every content creator that has been in this for a while has experienced something like this, or similar like this, where a brand may or may not like what a creator has said. And instead of taking the constructive feedback about what he said, or what the creator has said, he or she, they kind of look at it as, okay, no, we don't want that out there, because we don't want to deal with that creator, because we're trying to make sure only thing we hear is the positive thing sort of about things. And the funny thing is about all of that is, a lot of times by the time the creator gets to the size of they're dealing, I'm not saying he, but he or she gets to the point of where they're dealing with brands, they're big enough probably where that if they don't get the product sent to them by the brand, they can buy and do their own sort of video anyways, which they were already kind of doing in the first stages before they even started dealing with brands. So it's always been this very silly sort of thing. Now, I will say that a lot of times the feedback I think should be constructive, or the criticism should be constructive, and not something just to create sort of controversy, hype, silly emotions, and drama. Like that stuff, I can understand why brands might want to step away from that, because that's not constructive. But I do believe like constructive criticism needs to be sort of accepted, or even sometimes some cases where we're playing with titles and looking to try to make something more intriguing, because you got to play the YouTube algorithm game, that brands need to kind of understand it. And I find like a lot of them don't, because they only see the visual and don't understand how YouTube functions that, because many of them don't work in that space or have never done stuff as a content creator to kind of understand that, and they don't have the data truthfully outside of what like the external APIs kind of some of the brands will use to kind of access sort of things, to kind of get an understanding. And they'll just see the numbers but not necessarily understand what the numbers mean, and they really should be speaking to the creators to get the better understanding of why or what is something's being said, why it's working in this way, like just getting better information than just kind of reading data or just looking at a title and getting kind of confused, or getting sort of upset about those things. Yeah, that happens sort of across the board with that sort of thing.
If you make a creator feel like they're immune to any punishment from you, not only will they provide their audiences with more objective, balanced videos that actually show the criticisms. But then you as a brand look like a brand that's willing to take that criticism, pass it on to the engineers. And if you ask any YouTuber, they'll say, whenever we go to the Sony events, the engineers are there and they have sit-down sessions where you can tell the engineers what you think. Sony feels like the brand that is able to take criticism the best. And so I give them the highest marks for that. And I'm more likely to use their products knowing that they're a brand that takes criticism the best, even if they don't act on that criticism as quickly as I would like them to.
Yeah, now that's that like right there already saying is like the brands that are willing to take the criticism and take the feedback, talk about the feedback. I think this recently happened not too long ago with we know the whole AI pin thing and which I got another rant about those pins and the AI hardware, but like I remember like within that whole thing with what we're talking about within KBHD, we were talking about how they were saying he was destroying, brands based upon the feedback that he gave. But interestingly enough, a company like Razer actually listened to some of his feedback on some of the things that he had mentioned on about the Razer phone that you saw the changes kind of happen in the next one. Those are the things that are going to make creators want to work with the brands more. And that's at the same token, that's going to allow their audience to trust those brands because the feedback is being heard and genuine, and like that sort of relationship is where sort of things go. If you're a brand and all they want is, sometimes all they want is a hype piece, realistically. And if that's all that they want, like that's just paying a creator to make a commercial. And in that sense, that's just like the audience is not necessarily, they can see through that and they're not want to hear that. That's not what they're there for. They're for the creator to hear a genuine experience, a genuine sort of thought about what they think about the product or feature or whatever the sort of case may be. So yeah, more brands need to take better criticism, and there is a lot that sort of do in those regards. But I will say, as creators, you got to make sure you're delivering the criticism sort of in a constructive and professional sort of way, because you get a lot of times you get people just wanting to make hype and silliness and just kind of go overboard with it and don't want to use professionalism, and then they wonder why the brands don't want to work with them. Well, you kind of, yeah, if you're not going at it in a professional way, then yeah, that's how it's going to come.
Is ask yourself, are you doing something to put yourself in that box that Lumix feels safe presenting a camera that other people they thought would be critical of, that they don't invite, but they say, these people will be fine. These people we can manipulate. These people we can get them to say the positive things. These people won't be that critical. Make sure you're not doing something to put yourself in that category unless you want to be in that category. And again, if your plan is like, man, I love trips, I want to make money, I got lots of sponsors that I got to have inventory for, I like all cameras, then cool. There's some people out there that I adore their content who mostly love everything. They love everything tech-based because they're just in love with technology, and every little, I call it an infinitesimally better gadget, that makes them happy. So cool, you can be in that box. And for a marketing department, that's a good person to invite because they love tech, right?
I will say yes. Like what he's saying is like that two box, that camp of somebody that's never going to really say anything negative and just loves everything tech, hype about everything. I think that's cool, but I also think that the audience can see through that when it's not genuine, when it's only seen to be something that on the influencer side of things, just to push a product or push something out there. And instead of just like, I'm genuinely excited about this, and I like all tech, but also the constructive criticism, like I was talking about earlier, that goes along with it. I love all things tech. I love going on trips. I love those sort of things. I like the community and the environment and seeing cool new tech products with it. But I'm also like constructive criticism. I like to add to those things as well too. And also understanding like if you're dealing with brands that are just looking for hype pieces, or this is what this trip sort of involves, is to like be aware of that and understand how you're going to relate that back to your audience when you're going to do something like that. Because if it turns into something that the audience feels is disingenuine, that's not going to work out for you nor the brand at the same time. So you really got to have that sort of balance, and also figure out you might not want to be on that other side, and that's fine. Some people kind of want to be in a little bit of the middle, depending upon what they're sort of doing in their brands. But like, I think my advice sort of would be here with this is, make sure you're involved in dealing and working with the products and brands that you're actually interested in and like. Like that's the first most thing. If you have to be interested into it, because if you're not interested in it, it gets kind of seen through. You're just talking to talk about this, reach the audience to get a paycheck. And trust me, you'll see it in the comments, you'll see it in the views, and you'll start to see that affect other videos as well too, because they see that the authenticity is sort of coming down, which I feel like this is what Gerald's sort of whole video is talking about here, is getting to back to the space of authenticity when it comes to dealing with reviews in this community within the camera space, also within the tech space as well too, and a lot of other adjacent spaces as well. And making sure we have that divide between review that's genuine or a paid sponsor product that's clearly disclosed. And that's so important to be clearly disclosed, because we just seen that with the Insta360 thing and that stuff going on and that stuff that's being illegal. And if you know any brand or anyone that's doing that, yeah, call them out on it and just immediately no. That's just a no. Again, and I support anyone. I have zero tolerance for that sort of thing, because we need to be honest and fully disclose those things and make sure, like, and I'm mostly talking to creators, but also this is good for folks that are just viewers to understand. Like, if that review seems like a paid review, call that out to sound like that, because no review should have 100% positive everything. There should be some negative or meh aspects about a product, because there's no such thing as a perfect product. Now, some creators can be genuine because this is the perfect product for them, and they may not be able to see those flaws as well. All the flaws aren't just big deals, but they should be sort of mentioned and put out there. But I just want to sort of give my sort of reaction, 2 cents about what Gerald has kind of said here. I think it's really sort of good. Go watch this whole video. I'll link that in the description for sure. And I think what he's saying here is something that we should all take heed as creators in the tech, camera, and gaming sort of space. I'm in the tech and gaming, but you know, anyone in the review space, this is something that you really take heed to. And also for people that are just viewers and fans of this stuff, it take what's been said in his video and my video as well too. It's just ways to kind of see what videos are for, see what they are, and like shout your voice out there. If like you feel something is a certain way, don't feel bad to call the creator or the brand sort of out for those things as well, because it doesn't benefit anybody if we don't have like honesty and authenticity as much as we possibly can in this sort of space. So that's what I really kind of had here. I've never done a really reaction videos before, so hopefully this first one was a decent one here. I know it went pretty long, but share your thoughts below in the comments. Thanks for watching.